In this video, I'm talking about high-functioning autism and everything you need to know about it coming up. Hey guys, I'm Dan. I have Aspergers Syndrome, ADHD, OCD and dyslexia. I make weekly videos on this type of content, so if you're new around here and want to learn more, remember to hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you're notified when I upload a video. And if you're watching on Facebook, please give this page a like and a follow so you don't miss any more videos. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing the background, the terminology, the history of everything to do with high-functioning autism, and then also right near the end, I'm going to be discussing some of the ways that you can identify it in somebody in case you're wondering what it is. This video is proudly sponsored by iFlipped.com, which is basically a site where students can go on and rent textbooks and ebook versions of what would normally be college books that you pay loads and loads of money for, but you may only use like once or twice. So basically the site is super awesome. You go on there and you can actually rent for like a fraction of the price per week these books that you actually only need for a short amount of time in your career, which is going to save you guys a ton of money. So there's a link in the description below with a percentage off if you're interested in taking them up on that. But more importantly, guys, they're actually running a 30-day free mental health awareness campaign. So when you go to their site, the little pop-up will pop up and you put your email address and name in and you click go and you sign up, and for 30 days they will send you a mental health tip every single day for 30 days, which is super awesome to try and help boost mental health awareness and help people with mental health conditions. So please check them out, links in the description below, and I hope that you guys do because it's a super awesome website and the guys are really nice. And hey, a free tip every single day for 30 days, I'm totally doing that. Okay, at the beginning of every single video, I read out questions from you guys that you sent me on Instagram, and if you'd like me to read out your question, please head over to Instagram and give me a follow, and then check my stories when I upload asking for you guys to ask me questions to be featured in a video just like this. My Instagram link is in the description below, or my Instagram name tag is at the top of this video. The first question is from Vanilla Twilight, and they said, what made you want to do YouTube? Also, thank you for helping me get diagnosed. Well, you're more than welcome, and I'd love to help people. What made me start YouTube? I just started uploading videos because I wanted to put information out there about my life experiences with autism, and that just led to people wanting to see more videos, and then it cascaded, and then I do it now every day. I love it. I love it. This next question is from The Happy Spoonie, and they said, if someone learned they may have autism, how would you suggest they talk to difficult family? Now, this is a big question I get asked a lot. I would suggest that you prepare what you're going to say and maybe prepare some like links or literature that they could then refer to, because there's only so much you can do. You can tell somebody about it, you can tell them where to go and read about it, but if they're not going to listen, at the end of the day, that's all you can do. Okay guys, thank you so much for tuning into this video. I am so humbled to have you all here, which is super awesome, and yeah, checking out the background. I'm loving this new setup. I wanted to use this for a while now as my background, so yeah, that's cool. If you want to be part of the Autism Superhero Squad, there's a bunch of community links in the description below if you want to take part in like Reddit and Discord and all that kind of stuff, or a Facebook group. There's loads of stuff going on, so please check out the links below. Before we get started, please leave me a comment down below to tell me what brought you to this video. Are you a person who is on the spectrum, or are you just looking to educate yourself or a family member? Please let me know. Okay guys, so let's go through the background. So I just want to be very, very clear here. High functioning autism is not an official term. There's no diagnostic for it. There's no actual medical terminology that refers to high functioning autism as a diagnosis. So you can't be diagnosed with high functioning autism, and it also does not appear in the DSM, which is the main way that people diagnose mental health conditions and neurodevelopmental conditions currently in today's society. So basically, autism was discovered as a kind of medical terminology back in like 1940s with a guy called Leo Kanner and also a gentleman called Hans Asperger, who were doing simultaneous information research on autism spectrum conditions. Then they were looking at more severe cases. So Kanner was looking at more severe cases of people who had like exceptional needs, and this became known as autism, or it was Kenner autism, and it was like Kenner autism, and there was some other nomenclature that they don't use anymore, and they were never used in a diagnostic process. But in the early 1990s, they started to realize that there were more like mild, less severe support needs for some individuals who were still displaying some of those core traits of an autism spectrum condition, but were more similar to that of the Hans Asperger research paper and diagnosis. So then Aspergers syndrome became more of a diagnosed term for the people who had less severe support needs than that of the typical autism support needs that had been priorly diagnosed to this. Then, of course, this opened up the more broad spectrum of the idea that it is an autism spectrum, and it was quite a large spectrum, and that brought forward what we now know as the autism spectrum. Of course, Asperger's syndrome became more widely used for people who were not displaying those severe needs or severe support needs as before, being noticed and documented and diagnosed, prior to this kind of 1990s ideological shift where they realized that autism affected more people than just the severe support needed version that they'd already seen. Also, guys, I did a video specifically on Asperger's syndrome and signs and traits. If you'd like to see that video, I will leave it in a card above here and in the description below for you guys to go and check that out. What do people mean when they're saying high functioning autism? So there are different support needs or levels of support needs for people on the autism spectrum. Some are more severe and some are less severe. For instance, somebody may need 24-hour help and care using the bathroom, making their food, getting around the house, getting changed, brushing their teeth, things like this. They could be non-verbal. They could be completely shut off from the what we know as like a social world. And those people would have more severe needs, and those severe needs would need to be met by a support worker, and that would be kind of like a severe need, which people would typically refer to as low-functioning autism. Now, high-functioning autism is a term that people started using to discuss people who were more verbally able, who were more independent living, who weren't that severe as what they typically had seen. So people who were able to hold down a typical job, or they were able to, go about their daily lives, but they'd also display some core traits of autism, and that was very, very interesting. So when people say high functioning autism, what they're actually saying is people who have less severe support needs on the autism spectrum than that of some people who may have more severe support needs. So basically, the DSM, which is the main way that all the medical industry actually diagnose an autism spectrum condition, used to have the term Aspergers syndrome. Now, if you're familiar with the term Aspergers syndrome, which is I had the diagnosis of, prior to 2013, this was a term used to diagnose people on a certain kind of end of the spectrum of autism, if you will. And this then was actually retracted and taken out in 2013 and replaced with what they call now autism spectrum disorder as a blanket umbrella term for everybody who is on this spectrum. And there are a few reasons for this. So basically, when people were diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome or high functioning autism, if you would like to call it that, then they were being left out of help and support that was definitely needed for them. So basically, their case was argued down when they went to assess for support. So people would say, oh no, you don't have severe needs, so you don't have access to any support like therapy or support or financial support in some cases. And this became a massive issue. So where you were comparing someone with a diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome to a diagnosis of classic autism, this didn't really sit well because they are both autism spectrum conditions. So they decided to take that out of the equation and just cover a blanket, just an autism spectrum disorder, so that everybody is kind of under this umbrella of autism, and everyone will have the individual needs and support that they need and can have access to because they have the right diagnosis. Now, this was revolutionary in the idea of having somebody with an autism spectrum condition of varying degrees of support having access to support and help. Now, lots of people still identify as Asperger's syndrome, and this could be for a few reasons. One is that they was diagnosed before 2013 and they still have the Asperger's syndrome nomenclature label in their diagnostic paper. And also maybe that they haven't really kept up to date with what's going on and the new nomenclature and the new diagnostics, because obviously if you've had a diagnosis before, you're not really going to keep up to date with those medical papers if it has no use in your life. Needless to say, it doesn't mean that Asperger's syndrome doesn't exist. It was just saying that that's where it fits into this whole story. But I must make it clear that is a term that is outdated, and nobody really uses the term Asperger's syndrome anymore, and nobody really uses the term high functioning autism. Even though you might hear the term used or said around, it doesn't actually mean that they're referring to somebody as an actual functioning label. All they're just saying is they're referring to someone as how their support needs are met. Now, how do you identify like a high functioning autism or somebody on that end of the autism spectrum with less severe support needs? This is very simple, and I'll go through just a few little traits that I can identify for you so you'll be able to kind of know a bit more about it. So the first one is issues or difficulty with eye contact. Now, I have issues like making eye contact with people. I know that a lot of people on the autism spectrum have this issue, and it's a big one when you're confronted with people in a professional or social manner. But this is something to look out for if you know somebody who has this. Another one is bad social skills. Now, social skills and social communication and the unwritten laws of socializing. Now, with socializing, people tend to have a body language where they use their hands and they do body gestures and they do unusual face gestures. And what this is basically a non-verbal communicative process, and social gestures and social cues are difficult for people who have autism of this less severe support needs. So you may be in work with somebody and then you realize that they may not be able to have the best conversation. They're not knowing when to chime in with the conversation. They're not knowing when to stop talking. They're not knowing that the volume of their voice is getting louder or quieter. They don't know how far to stand away from you. These are very interesting concepts that are obviously unwritten rules that you learn as you grow older, but people with an autism spectrum condition don't actually learn this in the same way. Another huge one is issues with sensory processing disorder. Now, I did a video all about sensory processing disorder and how you can actually overcome some things with hacks and stuff, and I'll leave that video in a card above here for you guys to go check out as well. But basically, sensory processing disorder is when you have over or under sensitivity to things like lights and sounds and smells and being around loads of people, and all of this like audio and visual stimuli input can cause all kinds of crazy stuff. So you may see people who have an autism spectrum condition using like ear defenders, and this is because they are hypersensitive to the sound that's coming off of certain things. It could be anything. Like for me, it sounds of like plastic bristles. I can't be around plastic bristle noises, and even the thought of them makes me a bit uncomfortable. But it could be anything. It could be opening like the freezer and like hearing the ice hit that tray. There's a bunch of different reasons, and it's very, very individual, but it all tailors around sensory processing issues, basically like light, too much light. So people can go to stores that have fluorescent lights, and those fluorescent lights are too overpowering for them, and they can see the flicker, and this can cause them to be upset and distressed, and it could cause meltdowns, it could cause all kinds of upset, and just completely disrupt the entire flow of what that person is doing, and this is very common within autism. Another one would be like hypersensitive to food and textures. So if you're like eating something that is like sloppy, or you're eating something that's cold, or you're eating something that has an unusual texture, sometimes this can trigger a sensory processing disorder issue as well, because it is this condition. You're sensitive to certain things, and it could be like taste, it could be smell, it could be texture. These are all very, very, very common. Another one is anxiety, feeling super anxious. People with Aspergers syndrome and people with the autism spectrum just as a whole have super high anxiety issues. Now, I have anxiety support groups that I go to. I have counseling for anxiety, but feeling very, very anxious, especially on social situations like family parties, get-togethers, family dinners, things like that. These are going to heighten their anxiety because of the social pressure to be a certain way that is very confusing for the person with the autism spectrum condition. And also, OCD, bipolar, and depression, these are the most common comorbid issues that accompany an autism spectrum condition. So somebody with an autism spectrum condition of less severe needs may have OCD and depression and stress, and those things will manifest themselves as mental health conditions, which are very upsetting and are big issues, but they're also an indicator to say that this person is on the autism spectrum. Obviously, if the rest of the condition presents itself in the other traits and stuff like that. But I'll leave a more detailed video for that in the card above. Like I said, all about Asperger's syndrome and traits if you're looking for something like that. The link will be in the description below and in an iCard above here, so you can go and check that out as well. So in summary, it's just an autism spectrum condition. Asperger's is autism, high-functioning autism is autism, but Asperger's syndrome and high-functioning autism aren't nomenclature that is used to diagnose or describe anybody in the autism spectrum. It's just an autism spectrum disorder, and it will soon probably become an autism spectrum condition because a lot of people are saying the word disorder is negative, and there's a big, huge drift in the community between what the nomenclature is going to be. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't want to identify as Asperger's syndrome. If you think that you want to identify as someone with Asperger's syndrome rather than just say autism spectrum condition, and that's absolutely fine. I don't think there's any issues with that. And if you want to say that you have high functioning autism, I guess people may not understand what that is, and I guess this is the reason for this video, and I hope that you've learned something today. So if you enjoyed this video, guys, please give it a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe and check out the videos each side of each one ones I was talking about within this video, and I'll see you next time, guys. Peace.